Welcome to the Heart of Collaboration. I'm your host, Dr. Bernice Belt, and I am so grateful that you would allow us into your viewing audience. We have some wonderful guests with us today, and we're wanting to get back into the new pastor series. It's very difficult because pastors are so busy, but we're very fortunate to have new pastor, Reverend Arthur Williams, here today, and his lovely, lovely wife. And she's his wife, but she is also his partner in ministry. Welcome, Pastor Williams.
Pleased to be here.
Yes. Welcome, First Lady Williams. And she's kind of quiet, but she's got a smile that'll knock you out. She'll be talking in a minute. Pastor Williams, we have a lot to cover, but we're going to do it because we know that people are interested whenever new pastors come to town. And you have come to the award-winning Paducah, Kentucky, I want you to know. And so, Pastor Williams, let's start a little bit with some background. Let's dig into your bio a little bit, and we're going to do the same thing with you, Lady Williams. So, first of all, get us started. Tell us where you're from and how in the world did you get to Paducah?
Well, originally I'm from Paris, Kentucky, Bourbon County. Home of Secretariat, so that's what most people know about Bourbon County. But beyond that, growing up in horse country, I had a chance to be very connected to the church, and also because I had very great family values that were instilled into me. My father and mother are both in ministry as well. My father is the pastor of two churches, Woods Chapel CME Church in Millersburg, Kentucky, and Wesley Chapel in Carlisle.
Okay.
We're obviously Methodists, since I've said the CME Church, so my father has recently been moved to those churches, but I have also matriculated and went through the process through the Methodist Church as well when I availed myself, which is how I got to Paducah, Kentucky. We've been on the Louisville-Lexington side for my entire ministry, going 14 years now, but now we've come to Paducah. I got sent over to the Evansville-Hopkinsville side, and the very first church that they have sent me to pastor has been the great flock there at St. James CME Church. I'm so honored to be their pastor.
St. James CME. Now, what does the acronym CME actually mean?
Christian Methodist Episcopal.
All right.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
where is it located, Pastor?
Well, originally, we're actually closer to the origins of the CME Church by being here in Paducah, because Jackson, Tennessee ain't that far away.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually pleased to be here. I'm going to get down there to Lane College if I get a chance to go and see some great people down there, and maybe touch Mother Liberty, which is our first church, and things like that. Be able to, since we're down here close here in Paducah. We actually are a part of the Kentucky region here in Paducah, located right there at 800 Tennessee Street.
800 Tennessee Street. You don't have a church and you're looking for a church and you might want to go visit there one Sunday, that's where they'll be. And he can bring a good word. I've heard him preach. I've also heard him sing, but he ain't singing today. I'm going to come back to you in a minute and talk about the process that you went through in order to become the pastor. First Lady Williams, tell us a little bit about you from your bio.
I am originally from Chicago, born and raised. I am from Chicago, and I moved to Frankfort, Kentucky, the capital of Kentucky, to finish my bachelor's degree in agriculture food science, which is how I met him at Kentucky State University.
All right.
And then he was a minister when I met him, and he got appointed, and that's how we ended up in Paducah.
Awesome. And your degree is in what?
It's agriculture food science.
Good. Good. You're in Kentucky. That's a good place to have that kind of degree, isn't it? Pastor, what is your degree or degrees in?
Well, I have 2 degrees. My wife has 2 degrees too. That's the most recent one. She's working on her master's too. I like to toot her horn, you know.
You're speaking it into existence as
though she's finishing
all
it.
Right.
So she took a year off. We're actually expecting, so she took a year off, and she'll be going back to finish her master's and be that great community nutritionist that she's dreamed to be. I mean, I'm pretty sure she'll talk a little bit about that as we go on the show. But my degrees, more or less, I have 3 degrees. I have an associate's degree, just like my wife does, and then I also have a bachelor's degree. My bachelor's is in a business administration and management from Kentucky State University.
Awesome.
And then I also have a bachelor's of arts in business administration with a concentration in management. So I have a marketing and a management specialization degrees. Yes.
Excellent. Awesome. Now, before we go into this next thing, Sister Williams, let's talk a little bit about who's in the basket right now.
We have a little girl on the way.
Oh, that is so sweet. Oh, I bet right now she's already going to be a daddy's girl. Oh my goodness. All I wanted to do is tell y'all better run through some kind of process if you ever want to date this girl later on, because you're going to be in trouble with Pastor Williams. Pastor Williams, I know that every denomination has a process. And if you would briefly explain the process that you entered into and got you into, or brought you to, the position of pastor at St. James CME on Tennessee Street.
Well, 14 years ago, I was licensed to preach at the Great Corinth CME Church in Winchester, Kentucky. That church was with some older seasoned members, and so I was a breath of fresh air to them, as they would always say. But I thought that was the most precious experience that I've ever had in ministry, because they stayed on me and made sure I knew what I was talking about, and not just talking about the person I met, but talking about the person I knew in Jesus Christ.
All right.
And so I will always remember Brother Orville Davis, who said, "Preacher, you know how to preach, but just remember how when you preach, always preach heaven, but also preach hell, and be able to say both sides of the spectrum, to say that we have a place we're going, and it's our choice of which one we make our home, but we must choose which day, choose this day whom we will serve." And so I always remember that. I still talk to Brother Orville to this day in his late 90s. I still talk to that man.
Yeah, we need mentors.
To be able to speak as a laity. He wasn't even a minister, but as a lay. I always know that as even this show is called The Heart of Collaboration,
yes,
it's a collaboration between the pastor and the lay to actually create the atmosphere of what a church needs to be relevant in this day and age. And so I hone into that. Speaking of which, I had to be licensed through that, so I had to take tests and assessments and go through numerous trainings to be able to stay within that moment of being a lyocentric, which is a licensed preacher. I was that for about 2.5 years of just being excited to just be an evangelist.
Yes, indeed.
And and I wasn't thinking God was going to take me no farther than that. Didn't want to be pushed no farther than evangelist. But excuse me, but God knows God's plan,
yes,
and what He wants us to do. And so in moving up through the ranks, I availed myself to the annual conference, which is the Kentucky region, and to be admitted on trial. In order to be admitted on trial, you must first be a licensed preacher, but also then the church must vote to send you to the annual conference to admit you on trial. So that means that not only had I proven myself at that point as a licensed preacher, but the church thought that if I were to be sent back to them, to pastor them, because once you are admitted on trial, those are where we send our pastors from. And so it doesn't, even with the ordinations within the CME church, it's once you have availed yourself and the bishop and the committee on ministry have decided that you are deemed fit to pastor,
yes,
then they send you. And so that vote is very important. That occurs in the fourth quarters that we have, that the lay do. And they availed me the opportunity to be able to go and admit myself on trial back in 2007, 2008 year. I stayed on trial, still with the ministry, committee on ministry, and to be able to reach with that. But I went through the process to be ordained deacon, which is the first ranking ordination, and then which is an assistant ordination. In the process of those times that I was admitted on trial, I served 4 churches in Louisville. So I was the assistant pastor at Brown Memorial, which is our largest church in the Louisville area. for about a half a year, and then I was the assistant of Lampkins for about a year, and then I went to Miles Memorial for 3.5 years, which is a sister church there, where I was the assistant. So I was able to be in every urban opportunity of Louisville that we have. I got to serve under our person that was formerly, but currently at that time, the chair of the Committee on Ministry, Reverend Della Porter, who was at Phillips, which was at the other urban area of Louisville. So time and time I would check in with Phillips as well to be able to serve there in that church, but I was not their assistant. But I served as the associate of Brown Memorial, served as the associate of Lampkins Chapel, and served as the associate pastor to Miles Memorial, where I was also the assistant pastor at Miles. I did that all while I was at the University of Louisville and Jefferson Community and Technical College. And then I transferred down to Kentucky State University, where both my parents went, so we're HBCU generationally.
Oh, outstanding.
And so I went down to Kentucky State University, where I had dreamed to go at first. And so it was not so much as going to aspirations to go to U of L. I actually had aspirations to go to Kentucky State University first. I'm one of those rarities to say that I was declined first to go to the school, but still was able to go once and then get not 1 but 2 degrees. So
fantastic.
I have a deep passion for Kentucky State University.
Nobody but God.
Nobody but God.
A moment ago you said
Yes.
HBCU,
Yes.
which is historically black colleges and universities,
Which is where we
just
met.
in case.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is where we met.
Yes.
But to finish the process also, so I was trying to kill 2 birds, 1 stone, saying
Yes.
where I was the assistant as well. So I was also ordained deacon, then I was ordained elder, and that was on this side. So everything that has ever happened to me has always been on the Evansville-Hopkinsville side. I'll say it like that too. I accepted my call to preach at an annual conference on the Evansville-Hopkinsville side in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, at Freeman Chapel. And so then I went back, and then I went to the licensuric moment, a year in, and then we went to license. But then I came back. I was a deacon on the other side, but when I was availed to elder orders, I was ordained elder. So it's the highest position in the Methodist Church is the role of elder, and that's the ordination of elder, other than our bishop. So our bishop is the highest ordination, the highest order is the election to bishop. So the bishops are elected every bishop that is elected was an elder prior to being elected. So our highest ordination ranking is elder. Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. There's a lot to explain because the CME, and I won't mention all other denominations, but CME is one of those denominations that really have an accountability hierarchy or an accountability process. And I really respect that, because you just can't show up one day in the CME denomination and say, I was called to preach, and the next thing you know, you're expecting somebody to call you to be pastor.
Right.
It doesn't work like that in CME, and that's a good thing. Now, that turns some people off, but only people who maybe call themselves. Now, people who are called by God, they understand there has to be protocol and there has to be process. And you have to be prepared, and then you have to be accountable.
That's right.
So my question is that you have a board of electors or the elections, what are they called, who will decide if you become pastor?
So the Committee on Ministry is the ones who do all of the training and also the examination of those who are on trial. So the probationers.
Okay, all right.
And so the probationary period varies per person, but it is standard most of the time 2 years to your deacon's orders and 4 years in total to your elders' orders is typically what happens. But it is also at the move of the Lord, also, and the move of the bishop and the move of the committee. So it's at the will of the committee. Now, you're looking at me and you're saying this man done said 9.5 years of assistant pastoring, and before I became the assistant to the pastor and the assistant pastor at Phillips Memorial CME Church, which is where I came from prior to here. Prior to here, I was in Lexington at our largest church in Lexington. which is Phillips Memorial CME Church there, located at Corral Street. It's located right there at 421 Corral. See, I've said 800 Tennessee Street so much, I can't say 421 Corral.
That's family right now.
That is, but it's stayed 5.5 years there. My wife actually started attending church with me once we met. We met before we started dating. She started actually attending church with me at Phillips, and so she jokes with me sometimes and says that we was when we were just together as friends. She said I was coming to Phillips before we started dating. So she says Phillips is family. so that's Pastor Casey Combs, our pastor there. She even calls her sister. They are literally like sisters.
Yes.
So it is a blessing to now have not only a former pastor, colleague, it's weird to say all of those things, former pastor, former colleague, but also beyond that, a mentor, and all the things she's done. She was a former presiding elder of the Evansville-Hopkinsville district. And as crazy as it sounds, she also had a mindset that I would be in Paducah. She didn't know what it would be, but she thought I would be in Paducah. She said, I've been to Paducah and I just feel that it would be a good fit for you. So it's crazy how folk can speak things into existence years in advance.
Yes.
But on July the 14th, long story short, July 14, 2017, at annual conference, we found out at the exact same time that the church found out that I was coming to 800 Tennessee Street, right there at the corner of South 8th and Tennessee, at the Love Boat at St. James CME Church. And so,
well, let me ask you this. So in the CME denomination, you don't have a search committee.
No.
Within the church. The church body does not determine who the pastor will be.
Now, I will say that that's not saying that the church doesn't have a say.
Yes.
The church always has a say.
All right.
So the church spoke to the bishop and said, these are some of the things we're looking for based on who we are as St. James CME Church. In that discussion, Bishop knows who he has as pastors and so on and so forth, and those who have availed themselves into ministry. But he does also, we don't trust in our own understanding.
Yes.
So as Christians as a whole, so we let God direct our path. So in that same sense, Bishop, with every appointment, he does, knowing my bishop, Bishop Marvin Frank Thomas Sr., and my presiding elder Martha Granger, who would be able to give a recommendation on anything. I know that both of them are going to move at the will and desire of God. And so with that being said, they saw fit to send me, Bishop saw fit to send me to St. James, and yeah, I'm blessed to be here and honored to be here, humbled to be here with such great individuals that are there at St. James CME Church.
And so the authority in this process respected the criteria or needs or that were determined by the body of Christ at this local church. Awesome.
But once again, the bishop also has the distinct appointment to be able to appoint the pastors too. So he sees the overall need of where the church is going in the future. So it's not only to say where the church has been, not only to say where the church is, but it's also to say where the church is going. And so Bishop saw fit to send me to St. James, knowing that the history and knowing that I am a respecter of the history of the church, knowing that this church is one of the oldest churches in Paducah. 1859. We're celebrating 159 years actually this year. So
happy birthday.
Right, thank you. And so I say that because St. James is older than the CME Church.
Wow.
So St. James is 1859. CME Church was founded and constructed in 1870. And so, yes, I'm a youngster by age, but Bishop, again, and God knew that I'm a respecter of history and a respecter of our church. My grandfather was a Laneite, and so was a person who went to Lane College right here in Jackson, Tennessee. He got to go for 1 year because back in those days, they needed him back on the farm. And so, but because he didn't get to finish his college experience did not mean that my mother didn't finish hers or my uncle didn't finish his. They both have their degrees, but he started a legacy, and it
Yes.
was made fresh in the Methodist Church, through the CME Church, through one of the 5 schools that the CME Church has there
Yes.
at Lane College. So my family has had a tremendous heart for the Methodist tradition, the Wesleyan tradition. And as you said, you won't go into all of that. The Pan-Methodist
Yes.
tradition,
Yes.
to say that even beyond us as CMEs, the United Methodist Church, which really is the parent church to where our church birthed from, just for history mindset, because Methodist Episcopal South we birthed out of the Methodist Episcopal South, which means that we were separate but equal before there was a separate but equal. Just the history of that alone should make someone feel an integrity
Yes.
about being a part of the Christian Methodist Church. We didn't wait on Brown versus the Board of Education.
Yes,
We,
yes.
in 1954, in 1870, 5 years away from the Emancipation Proclamation, the CME Church, and so with the United Methodist Church said we should allow the colored Methodist Church to form so they can have their own bishops, their own pastors, be able to take care of themselves and the needs of the African American community. So that way that it was separate but equal in its true form, not just saying separate but equal and it not being separate but equal.
Yes.
So being able to have that history moment and to be able to stand on those shoulders of those bishops and those pastors and those individuals, those laity that came before me, make me get into the pulpit at 800 Tennessee Street and stand there with the utmost respect to be able to give to God's people there at St.
Yes.
James CME Church.
Yes, and I'm sure you were going to do this, but I'm just going to throw it out there anyway, get everybody excited about it. Is to have that available in print when you do your anniversary, and it doesn't have to be an intricate part of the program. You the pastor, y'all do what you want to do. but history, church history is important, just like family history is important. And I know there are a lot of people who would love to have what you just shared in their hands. It would enhance their lives. It would reinforce their respect for, and I'll say religious history, because that the word religion was used in its right context at that time, and certainly the spirituality of knowing where you came from, knowing where you've been going, and have some vision, some sensible vision that is God-based of where you're going. And that brings me to a question for Lady Williams. Lady Williams, you met him when he was a minister, so you didn't have that you didn't have that rude awakening, so to speak, of later hearing him tell you, "Baby, I've been called to preach the gospel of Christ." So he was already called. So you didn't have to go through that phase. That's a rough phase for a lot of spouses, husbands, wives, whatever the case may be. But when you knew, at the moment you knew that you were going to accept becoming a minister's wife, what are some of the emotional and mental and spiritual type of things that went on in you at that time?
Well, in Chicago, towards the end of high school, I was actually an armor bearer, and an armor bearer is just like an assistant to the first lady or the pastor. So I was an armor bearer for my first lady at my home church in Chicago. And so I got to be around the first lady and the pastor quite often.
You need to tell them where the church was now. Since you done brought up the church now, you need to make sure that you shout out your home church now. You gotta do it.
He tapped you, First Lady.
Go ahead.
My home church is First Paradise Missionary Baptist Church, and it's on the south side of Chicago.
All right.
So, yeah, I was an armor bearer for a few years upon graduating from high school. So I never expected to be with a minister, but I wasn't surprised when we started dating. And, you know, I realized that he was a minister. I wasn't surprised. I was like, I've been around this for the past few years of my life.
Yes.
So it's nothing new. It's just I actually get to date one. So just dating him and progressing with him has been fine. I think the more challenging part was when we actually had to uproot ourselves and when he was assigned to Paducah and we had to move here. That was probably like the more challenging part of like the ministry.
Yes, yes. The spouse or the, and of course that is a secular term. I like to say partners in Christ. That's my term for the husband or the wife, regardless of which one is the pastor. But being that partner in Christ is an honor and a privilege assigned by God. And I know that y'all love each other, and I know that you're in love with each other, and there is a difference. And I really respect and appreciate that. So when Pastor said he'd like to bring his wife, I was excited. I said, isn't that great? Yeah, you sure can. We have maybe a couple minutes left, and I want to say how important it is for you and the pastor to cast a vision to the church. And visions can be very lengthy, but if you can share some of the things that you're already doing as quickly as you can maybe, and then maybe one or two things that you have that's in the works that you're planning on.
Well, we are partners in Christ, so we run things by each other all the time, but also we understand that we're partners with St. James. And in being partners with St. James, we know that it's hard to break a threefold cord, and we do all things decent and in order through Christ and through making sure that God gets all the glory out of anything and everything we do. So we are very, just like as any Methodist church, we are very strategic in our structure of how we get things done. And so we have a couple things that we have been doing for years. And so that's why I highlighted that St. James, Bishop knew when he sent me the history of the church, but I wanted to say St. James didn't stay in 1870. They didn't stay in 1954 when the church changed its name to Christian Methodist, from Colored Methodist Episcopal Church to Christian Methodist. They didn't stay there. They've always been progressive, always been innovative, always had the leaders such as the C.K. Henrys and who was principal in this area, and or the Amariah McIntosh, who were very out there in the community, and even the Martha Grangers, who's now the presiding elder. They've had folk to come through, even Darwin Adams, who's running for a electoral seat in Hopkinsville. And so, I mean, they've had pastors that have come through here and that have been very social and civic minded beyond that. So us getting there now, and doing what St. James has always done is to say we're in the moment. And so in the moment, we are making sure that we reached out to veterans this year.
Yes.
And to be able to make us a place that is veteran friendly.
Yes.
That's very important. There's a difference in honoring veterans and being veteran friendly. So we are very veteran friendly. We are very civic minded. We have several members of our church that are card carrying. Won't be ashamed to tell you, members of the NAACP, our discipline requires that we do that so much because of the history of our church.
Yes. Now, you have a women's ministry, you have children's ministry, you have Sunday school, you have Bible study, so you have a Christian Education Foundation.
We have Board of Christian Education.
And you're involved in the community. You're involved in the community together with the NAACP through the education system. And so I want y'all to know that this pastor and this partner in Christ, Our Lady Williams, they are already inundated in our community, and you need to go visit, get to know them, even though you may be a member of a local church. We're going to close down. Oh my gosh, we could be here all day. Got to bring you back. Thank you for tuning in to the Heart of Collaboration.